Hey now, welcome to the 18th episode of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along, welcome back. But if this is your first time listening to us, well then welcome. I'd like to start tonight's episode out with a quote from Mr. Hunter S. Thompson from his book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Good mescaline comes on slow. The first hour is all waiting. Then about halfway through the second hour, you start cursing the creep who burned you because nothing is happening. And then, zang. So I chose that quote just because, well, I was watching Fear and Loathing the other night. And it's one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite books. Hunter Thompson is one of my favorite people. But that's just an awesome quote he has about mescaline. And tonight's guest has an interest in mescaline that we'll talk about, but it just made me think of that quote. But I'd like to introduce to you guys Tommy. How you doing there, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. It's good to talk to you. We've wanted to have you on for a while, and we've just it's been hard getting everyone's schedules lined up, but I'm glad to finally talk to you. And as always, Stan's on the line too. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man.
Yeah, feels good to get another podcast going. It's been a while since we recorded, and I know we're always eager to do them. So
yeah,
it's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Tommy, just to start out, I mean, just why don't you give your story with drugs and when they became into your life with psychedelics and stuff like that.
Oh, for sure. But I just want to start out by saying that I love that you chose the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas quote. I literally watched that movie for the first time a few days ago.
Oh, really?
So that's some serendipity right there.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, so a little bit about me is like I actually grew up in like a really strict kind of Christian home. Eventually, like everything kind of went kaput. My mom and dad divorced, and a bunch of other like nonsense happened. And it wasn't actually until much later in college that I started challenging some beliefs that had been kind of like pushed into my brain and stuff. And it took like a lot of like little bits of life experience to get me there. But eventually, at some point, I actually did begin smoking weed. A friend of my friend, who was I knew him through working for a cover band as like a roadie. He's like, have you tried smoking weed before? And I'm like, well, I have a few parties. And he said, well, let me take you to your friend's house. They packed me a bowl and we play. Have you ever played Magic the Gathering?
No.
Oh, it's a card game. It's like super popular. You have to look it up. There's so much about it. But anyway, super dorky game. And we did that. And then later, like, I started smoking more weed once I became like the clinics and all the like legalization in California started happening. I started realizing, I can pretty much go anywhere. And it was a good time. But then eventually I watched a Rick and Morty episode and it mentioned salvia. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah. I love Rick and Morty.
Yeah, where Jerry's like, I'm literally time. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So it's hilarious. Yeah, so when they mentioned salvia, I was like, because I watched a YouTube video about it. It's how I found out about it because I'm absolute internet trash. And I was discussing it with my girlfriend. She's like, oh, well, what do you think about shrooms? And I said, well, I guess why not? So literally like mind blowing to her that I'd be willing to try that. Happened to know a guy from a ska band who knew a grower. So got some for ourselves. We kind of planned a night out. We had everything down and we did our first shrooms trip. I think it was July 2017. And we didn't know anything as far as like the most psychedelic like literature that we knew was a little bit of Aldous Huxley and The Doors.
Mhm.
So we're flying into this completely blind. We accidentally did the Terrence McKenna recommended trip. Everything was in complete darkness, and we did around like 3 grams each, like an eighth. And it was an amazing experience, absolutely beautiful. And later in my life, completely by accident, I got a hold of some LSD. I went to downtown Riverside one time, and have you ever watched any of those like really old drug commercials for like the propaganda,
Oh
where they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, we're like, they'll be like, listen here, young kids, you better be careful. You'll be getting out of your car with your sweetheart and whatever, and this is what'll happen. And some dude just walks up randomly to you and offers you drugs. That's exactly what happened. I got in my car intent on getting coffee. I wound up with like these drugs. Um, yeah, so I read online because he gave me this weird measure. He was like, "Oh, it's like 10 for a tenth." I'm like, I don't know what the hell a tenth is, so I go look it up. And only having mushrooms as my experience, I figured like once I started reading like a tenth a tab was basically like a microdose. I was like, oh, okay, so I had to spend like $30 or $40 on acid to get like the full experience, and I was completely wrong. And I
Yeah.
had and that was like a full tab, and God knows what it was, but it was really really good. And that was one of the most difficult trips of my life
Huh.
because of like it was completely unexpected. I had no idea what was going on. I actually was supposed to go into work that day. Like it was I had no idea I was supposed to be going to work. I figured I could just like lie around for a few hours and feel a little bit woozy. And then I got called into work, panic set in. I had to make some excuses, and I managed to get out of work that day, so I was completely clear. But at some point, because I was still living with my mother at the time, um, since she's still really really conservative. Sadly, she voted for Trump. Not her finest hour, but basically at like some point I realized like I can't stay here. She's gonna be home any minute, and she already had a breakdown for me for all this other stuff, and I'm not gonna put her through that. So I had to get on acid while still in the middle of a trip and drive to the next city over to get to my friend's house where I would be like safe. And yeah, so when they say don't drive on psychedelics, the only reason why I don't really believe that many people will is because like in that moment I sat into my car, like sheer wave, it was like tidal wave of anxiety gripped me before I even stuck my key into the port. But oh boy, I made it alive. I did my best not to do any damage. I've tried to avoid that kind of stuff ever since. But the incorporating the trip actually was was actually like quite refreshing because it was almost like I had gone through the gates of hell itself and I had like come out alive. And so at that point I started getting more into like just reading the literature before I even planned another trip. And definitely was trying to be like, okay, never do anything crazy since. But after like my drug trips, I started to get a little bit more into like the drug culture and stuff as one normally does, like going to forums, just like looking up like for me personally like music and stuff. That kind of helps me get into things. But eventually I just started watching like documentary and shows and stuff. And have you guys seen Drugs Inc?
Oh yeah, I love that series. Yeah.
Yeah, so on one of those they talk about Molly, and I don't know if you guys have tried Molly, but it is absolutely hella fun to roll. It's one of the funnest things to do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like rave setting. The first time I actually did that, I was actually by myself, and I was testing a pill before I went to this festival I was going to, and I was just in the rain, like dancing like a madman, and it was the most fun thing ever. But yeah, later after watching some shows about like I think it was even on Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, like it's just a dirty business with MDMA, and just like with most drugs, and this one is this endangers like this tree in Cambodia, and the name is extremely hard to pronounce. It's something like Maya prunam trees, and basically like 5 million got cut down in like just a decade, just to supply basically like the two biggest consumers of these pills is Europe and North America. And like within the next decade there's probably not going to be any left, so we're just gonna, not only is this tree going to be extinct, but all the club drugs will be gone and there's going to be nobody to restore it. So I think like it's just kind of like a crying shame to me personally that people are willing to go through so much for their stuff without knowing where it comes from. And yeah, so eventually I started looking into more things after making like some talk on Reddit, and I discovered through like a bunch of research that people that have taken mescaline have compared it to like have compared it to like ecstasy and stuff, but they're like it's basically like ecstasy's older brother in a sense where like all the effects are just like so much better. And not to mention it, and that's just like a threshold dose, whereas you go like into the higher doses, that's when you can actually do all the crazy psychedelic effects that you would see from like, a first gen psychedelic. And so like personally for me, I kind of want to like start spreading a message out there for mescaline that people can possibly look and substitute for this kind of stuff. And that's kind of where I am at in my psychedelic journey. I'm kind of here in the middle. I do some music for it, and it's just an all around interesting place where I find myself now when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Huh. Yeah. So, well, to go back to the tree, thing, I had looked that up when we had talked about it. And so the chemical that they're looking to make MDMA from, is Safrole, and it's in the, Cinnamomum, parthenoloxon tree. But it's a sassafras tree. And what, what's interesting is that, yes, and they're unfortunately not just getting, destroying the population of that tree, but I'm sure, there's quite a bit of deforestation going on around the trees that they're taking down and everything. And I saw that episode of Drugs Inc. where, I mean, they cut these just huge trees down. I mean, it's not little trees. They're gigantic trees. And, so that really does suck. And I wonder, not that we need to, like you said, there's substitutes to MDMA and research chemicals and stuff like that, as well. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if whatever industries are looking for Safrole, if, they can go after the American sassafras trees, which are everywhere. I mean, there's areas they grow like weeds almost. And it has Safrole in the bark, in the root bark. And I wonder if it's maybe not the same percentage and, like if it doesn't work the same or if it's just the industry and the money is already there in the foreign trade, of this oil from those trees. I wonder, why they go after these trees. If that's like just that region is the industry set up to produce Safrole or what it is. I wonder what that is, but.
I think you're right. It's the amount of it's like the type of chemical and the difference in like the Safrole. I think it's just like you can get more out of the Mariposa trees because those things are like you said, they're absolutely huge. And I think like the Safrole trees are a lot smaller, so they would actually have to put like more in to and you'd still be getting like kind of less. So there's like an efficiency loss, I think.
Yeah.
And obviously, like even in the United States, if you're found like trying to harvest like a sassafrole tree, like you'll be like arrested on the charge of like you're probably doing something with drugs.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, yeah. I mean, even if you look up, it's straight up like why is saffrole banned? So it's been that way since the 60s.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess that's part of the war on plants, I guess, and at that point, but I know there was something too, like, root beer used to be made from sassafras and, it was found to whatever that's the root in root beer is sassafras root. And I think there was some chemical in it that was found to cause cancer and they stopped using it and they started, having artificial flavoring in root beer. Like that's, if you've ever heard the term sarsaparilla for root beer, that comes from like the sassafras tree. And so I wonder if that's either Safrole or just something else that's in the root bark that, is why like they don't want people, harvesting it or something. If it's whatever that cancer causing agent was, I wonder. I don't know what the name of that cancer causing agent is. I just know that's something like you always read in like tree identification books and stuff. And when it comes across sassafras tree, it always says like used to be used to make root beer and sarsaparilla until they found that it caused cancer. But I guess I don't know exactly which chemical that was, but
Yeah, I actually never knew that root beer fact. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
What do they make it with now?
I think it's just artificial flavoring. Yeah. I'm not real sure. I know that, if you find a sassafras tree and like crush the leaves and smell it, it smells like sarsaparilla. Like you can definitely be like, oh wow, that's root beer. But, so as far as mescaline being at low doses being like, MDMA, I think that has a lot to do with their drug classification of both being phenylethylamine or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And was that, now I don't know how much I don't think we talked about it before, but I know we talked about Alexander Shulgin, and how he had a mescaline experience that basically redirected his life's work as a chemist to researching, chemicals that, basically playing with the mescaline molecule. And, after doing that work, he rediscovered MDMA and like became, put that back into the world basically, because it was first discovered by, Nazis. And then they thought it was like a cough medicine, and then they stopped doing anything with it. And then Shulgin rediscovered it after doing his work with the mescaline molecule. So it's pretty interesting is that, you're kind of talking about like moving, people's focus from MDMA to mescaline, but actually like our focus on MDMA came out of mescaline actually, with Dr. Shulgin.
Yeah, it's really crazy how that kind of works. But I mean, I'm actually kind of not surprised. But yeah, and I think it's just because like from what I've read, like the thing about like Molly and stuff is like you've heard like the term like Jedi flip and hippie flip and stuff like that, right? Where people are like combining mostly things of like MDMA plus shrooms or MDMA plus acid or stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. And the thing about like especially with mescaline is that it has one of those like combined effects types of things where people have said like, oh well, I've combined mescaline with LSA and it has extremely like really good like synergetic effects. And so it's kind of crazy like how I keep finding links between those two and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now talk about like your experience or knowledge of growing the actual cactus or how people get their hands on that.
Okay, well actually like it's actually ridiculously easy to get a hold of cactus. Like there's like places on eBay where you can still get cactus. Let's see, the last place I ordered cactus from said, oh hey, we're moving from eBay to somewhere else, here's our cactus website that we can get some. And like normally like I don't know how it is in like other parts of the country, but like especially in like Southern California, we went to a hyper garage sale that was going on in like the Riverside area. We started walking around and someone had a nursery and we just got 2 new San Pedros to add to our collection.
Oh, awesome.
So but yeah, but as far as like growing them, it's actually like it's decently easy. It's just a matter of like everything is very like very very slow. Because from most sites and stuff like that, people say like they won't even think about harvesting their San Pedro for like a decade, because of you want to make sure that you not only have enough for you to use for yourself, but also have enough to let it keep growing. Or something that you don't want to take more than necessary. In that sense, is how I feel. So, like that's why personally for me, I'm just trying to grow like 2 or 3 cacti and try to get them up to speed before I even start about like making too much extraction for my own products.
Now with San Pedro, like is that the one that it's like super tall and you need like almost 4 feet of it to like have a dose?
I think so. There's a bunch in the same genus. I forget what the genus is called actually. But but yeah, there's basically like three different ones. There's the San Pedro, then there's I think one's called like Peruvian torch. Then we have peyote, which I hope nobody actually keeps consuming because it's so endangered. Um and I think the one that you're also talking about. But for San Pedro, using an extraction method that I found, you only need like about a foot and a half, and you dry that out, and you turn it into powder, and from there you can either like make a brew out of it, or you can try to go for the extraction of the mescaline.
Oh, and just get like the kind of isolated alkaloid out.
Yeah, it's actually not that hard. There's a food grade extraction just floating out there in the web for people that might consider like experimenting with. And I think it's great that there's something that you can just like, so like even basically if you get it wrong, like get doing the extraction method, if you eat it, you're not gonna be poisoned.
Huh. And so whenever it's time to harvest the cactus, can you just like kind of prune it, just like cut the top off and it will continue to grow? Or, do you have to basically kill the plant to harvest it?
Oh no, you can cut the top
okay.
off. Yeah, that's what I love about cacti. You can just hack them and they'll grow back as long as you give them enough, like just enough dirt to grow.
What's the experience like? I've never tried MDMA, ecstasy, any of that, and I've actually heard of plenty of stories of mescaline. But I mean, what's the experience like? Is there anything you could compare it to?
Oh my god, no, it's beautiful. I don't know. You remember the ending of Holes?
Yeah.
Where everyone's just like shouting and screaming and crying what happened. That's basically MDMA in a nutshell. If you want to get like, that's basically how it is. Let's see. Well, the first time dancing in the rain, I was basically like I was by myself and I was listening to Eat Static, and that was a good time. But like my first like super like powerful one came at a festival, and basically the minute it kicks in, you kind of, it's almost like you've taken in. It's almost like everything gets like super enhanced. The way my friend described it is like picture as if you're like you're feeling as good as you are, like stoned to the bone, but everything is completely like in high definition focus. And that's basically how it goes. Like you kind of are able to like breathe better, like nothing, like you're not cold anymore. Like how far you see with your eyes, you basically feel like this is like how far you can see, you basically taken as like this is your space,
Mm-hmm.
as in like you can pretty much go anywhere you wanted to. And all the music, just like for the most part, all the music isn't super empowering. So like people that listen to like if you listen to like EDM and stuff with just like the hypnotic beats, super fun. All you do is feel like dancing. Everyone's like super nice, super beautiful. um it's just like it's just a very like it's just a very social thing. Like for the most part, you will be able to talk to anybody. You'll be able to do anything that you pretty much want. And like everything is awesome. And yeah, everything is awesome, everything is cool when you're part of a team. It's basically like it's that. It's just it's amazing. But the thing is that people can like you can get super emotional and stuff. So like most psychedelics, like things can get brought to like the forefront. So like for instance, if there's like super emotional swells in the music, how do I put it? Oh, let me backtrack a little bit. Basically, like especially if you're at a festival for stuff like this, you become a slave to the rhythm. So
Yeah.
basically, anything the music does, like you're completely wired into it. So if the music swells and it's like a super emotional piece, you're definitely gonna start crying. If the music starts hitting hard, you're gonna want to mosh. Um, it's just all sorts of fun. Um, and so basically, like, yeah, like with the emotion stuff will get brought to the forefront. So you'll definitely be thinking about like, oh, these are all the things I'm gonna start doing when I start improving my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like if especially like if you're among friends, like you guys can get into super deep conversations about like personal things. And it's just like a really good, like it's like a miniature therapy release.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why it's being used for therapy, right? Is because it's, from what I've seen, like on documentaries and whatnot, it's because it makes it so much easier for people that wouldn't dive deep within themselves to talk about, the inner problems and all that.
Yeah, because it feels like when you become so fascinated with like the inner workings of like sociality and stuff like that, that like you are able to kind of take it from like a third person perspective, like, oh, okay, this is what I've done, this is my experience, I'm here now, none of that has any hold over me. At the same time, what has it taught me in a kind of sense like that?
Mm-hmm.
And contrary to popular belief, like you do not become like you don't become like super trusting of literally anybody that walks by. Like I've had my fair share of like going to festivals. Some dude or some like crazy chick is like they're doing some weird things, and everyone's like, "Yo, you gotta leave."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but like obviously, if like someone means you no harm, there's like, "Hey, can you do something?" You're gonna be like, "Oh, okay, there's no problem. I'm perfectly safe." So, and you won't be like spilling out like your darkest secrets to anybody that you don't feel like you can trust either. So sorry guys, true serum is it's not going to work that way.
Yeah. So people claim that mescaline can produce similar results, or
Yeah, they're saying that basically when you're doing mescaline, it's basically that, but like it's like on a times 10 scale where
oh
like
wow.
it's just as good. It gets you like if yeah, just as good if not better. And so I'm super excited to get my extract on its way. I give it a little test drive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because oh yeah, and then definitely like the feelings for that stuff. Little things like getting a back massage, amazing. Holding hands with people, amazing. Like it's a pretty good system.
But the
So
come down, I've also heard pretty horrific things about too, like the next day.
oh yeah, so sometimes especially if you had like a super good experience like the whole way through. So let's say like you go to your festival, you do your thing, and you're coming down around the time the festival ends. You automatically find your car, you get home, and you're able to go to sleep. The next day, you're probably gonna have a pretty good afterglow.
Mm-hmm.
But like about the 48th hour, things can get a little bit wild because there's like I guess like it's almost like I feel like it's almost like a mini version of like serotonin sickness. Like things can
Mm-hmm.
start setting you off if you're not too careful.
So wild meaning like just straight up depressed or anxious or all the above.
It kind of like that. So like for me and my for me and my girlfriend, it was after festival. We were just talking about like things in general, like normal stuff, and we were having a pretty good time. But I said something, and then she said something that kind of irked me,
Mm-hmm.
and so like it got into a little bit of like a heated fight, and like 5 minutes later, we're like, why the hell do we fight about that? And we realized, oh my god, we're still in that kind of come down.
Yeah.
So like things can get like just slightly more emotional. So it's always a good idea to just like communicate like, hey, just like with anything else, it's all about communication. So just for like the come down, just be a little bit wary. But like for the most part, like you can like for us, like we just smoke a little bit of weed like every once in a while during the stages of the come down, and it pretty much keeps us like just above like too emotional line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when will the effects of it like officially be out of your system, would you say?
It's pretty much out of your system by like day 3. It's like
Okay.
completely gone. All you gotta do is just rest up. You drink a lot of water. You definitely wanna have gum on you,
Yeah, because your jaw's clenched.
because yeah, because I just call them like the nashies, because like all you do is you want to just like fiercely chew on something. Everything is going, but like your legs are tired, your whole body's tired. So like, what's the one muscle that's not tired? And it's obviously your jaw, because we spend a good portion of our lives like stuffing our faces. So and just gotta get like 3 sticks of gum and just like chew them to death. Otherwise, your cheek's gonna be shredded.
So you mentioned something I actually didn't hear. I've never heard about, but San Pedro, you said, is endangered.
San Pedro is not, peyote is.
Oh, peyote, yeah.
Peyote.
And that's, I mean, people still use that though, right? For like ceremonial use and whatnot.
I mean, I haven't heard of ceremonial use. I've heard of like a bunch of San Pedro things in California. I've heard like, oh, they're doing a San Pedro ceremony over there.
Hmm.
I hope people aren't using peyote. It's most of its habitats have been like completely destroyed, and there's not a lot of it left. And I think the only people that are sanctioned to grow it are like Native Americans, and obviously there's not a lot of them left either.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and also, I mean, a lot of the like 60s culture, mescaline, a lot of that was synthesized and like not even, harvested from a natural source. And, but when they made the, scheduled, the DEA, Controlled Substances Act, they had it like listed as peyote, like for whatever reason, like that was the name of the cactus. But I don't think that peyote use was ever any more widespread than any of the other mescaline containing cactuses. And it's like come down to like, that was the name of the drug when it was like, as far as the law was concerned. But then also like, I think because, like I was saying, I think like one dose is like several feet of San Pedro or Peruvian torch, to where, peyote is much more, potent by weight. And so if you were harvesting this cactus to sell as a drug, like you would, in a bag and sell it or whatever, like it's a lot easier to sell a bag with a couple buttons in it, flower buds in it, than it is to sell a 4-foot like stalk of cactus. So I think that's why peyote just became known in the drug culture as like, that's the cactus that has mescaline in it, but, I don't think that, it was any more widespread than any of the other cactus. And it's probably a regional thing. There's some regions that have peyote, but don't have San Pedro and vice versa. But you're right. Like now with modern psychedelic culture, you hear San Pedro ceremonies all the time. Like that seems to be the cactus of choice for a mescaline experience now.
yeah, and I'm glad because, like I said, it's super endangered. Yeah. But actually, so I was actually online and stuff, and if you actually from the food grade extract, you can get what's called amber mescaline, and it's actually not pure mescaline. It's actually still mixed with another cactus alkaloid that also happens to have hallucinogenic effects. Now, yeah, so you can score that down to pure white mescaline. However, the person that discovered this method realized that for some reason, the amber mescaline was more potent per dose versus the same weight point as the pure mescaline. So it has to do with something that's in the cactus that gets lost when you isolate the mescaline by itself. But yeah, so especially now, like you don't need like 7 feet of San Pedro cactus unless you're trying to do a whole ceremony by yourself. Like because I think mine uses at most like I think it's 300 milliliters of the cactus powder, which is ground up and dried. So, and I think I only ordered 5 pounds, which is not anywhere close to like 5 feet, and I repotted at least 2 of those. So I think we're at that stage of economics in our extraction of drugs.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah. I've done peyote buttons, and that was in Amsterdam before they made it illegal there. And yeah, I mean, I would say it's very MDMA like, but still trippy, it's more psychedelic than like taking a roll for sure. And so I think it is akin to that kind of hippie flipping type of experience, to where like it's very and obviously set and setting and everything comes into play just like with everything else. But yeah, like it was a lot more fun than like, at the time when I took it, I mean, I was 19 or 20 and I had done a lot of acid and had bad trips, had good trips, done mushrooms and only had good trips at that point with that. So it wasn't like I was really, scared of psychedelics anyway. But I mean, I was in a city where, I mean, a lot of people in Amsterdam speak English, but a lot don't, and also I didn't know where the hell I was. And, but I was not, there was no scary moments whatsoever. Like, the only scary thing I remember was there's some, and if anyone's ever been to Amsterdam, maybe someone could look it up or whatever. There's some sort of sculpture that is, a bunch of fish, like marching, like they're in like rows, like a marching formation, and they're marching, and it's like these concrete, like little 4 feet tall fish. And, I came upon that after, while tripping on peyote, and it was really weird because too, like, I was with my sister and her friends, and I didn't tell them that I was going to take it. I went into a head shop to get a bowl because we bought some weed, and then she was like, oh, we had been smoking at the bar. And then like when we left, like we didn't have anything to smoke out of. So I was like, I'll go in a store here, and they call them smart shops there. And I was like, I'll buy a bowl in there. And I went in, and then I was like looking, and, they had mushrooms, and then they had peyote. And I was like, man, I can get mushrooms. I've never seen peyote before. I was like, how much is that, and whatever. And I was like, is that like one dose? And they were like, yeah. So I was like, I'll take that. And I ate it in the store and didn't tell my sister. And, but we were like super high anyway, and so it just ended up like got more and more weird. And then we came across that, the statues of the fish, and I thought they were coming at me, and I ran away from them. And then like my sister was like, what's like, they're just statues. What's going on? And like, I think she started to realize like, he's not just on weed. and I had to tell her, and she was like, oh, okay, that's fine, or whatever. And, so there's another thing that happened where, I don't know if it was the World Cup or if it was some soccer event was going on, and the Netherlands national team was like won or something. And we were on like their like cable car trolley thing. And, this is pretty late at night, but it's like, at least it was like the game just got over or something. And I don't know if we were near the stadium or a bar that everyone was at, but the whole train filled with people. And the like national soccer team there is like their jerseys are this bright orange. Mm-hmm. And, so the whole train, and like, I think, my recollection now is that there was nobody on the train except my sister and I and her 2 friends. And then all of a sudden the train was filled with, orange people, singing and like dancing and stuff like that. And I remember like asking my sister, I was like, please tell me a bunch of orange people just got on the train and I'm not just seeing that. And she was like, yeah, everyone's wearing orange and they're singing. And I was like, they're not singing English, right? And she was like, no, they're not singing English. I was like, okay, good. Cause I was at least tripping that hard that I was like, this is really weird and surreal, but I think it's actually real and I'm just not comprehending it right, and, but those are like the only like 2 like scary things that happened. The rest of the time, like, I was just kind of like wandering around the city like, wow, this place is awesome. Like we went through like the red light district where there's, hookers in the windows. And I was just like, I was laughing hysterically at all of them. Like, I don't know why. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. And, it was probably very insulting if, you're sitting there and some weird, hippie is going by and laughing at every window. But I remember that it was pretty funny. It was a good time.
One of them's at least like, well, it could be worse. I mean, sure, we're hookers, but at least we're not on drugs.
Yeah. So, talk about, your ideas with, kind of trying to grow some kind of weird hybrid, thing with mescaline infused mushrooms that you were talking about.
Oh, okay, for sure. So, basically, I was on a Reddit post and I said a thing, and that evolved into basically the idea of little science project is, can we infuse mushrooms with mescaline by either growing it in San Peyote powder or San Pedro powder, or either that or somehow like dusting them with mescaline as they keep growing. So basically what we're trying to do is just like in most, when you're growing mushrooms, you have to inoculate a jar, and it has to be part BRF or some other tech, like some wheat form, and then some vermiculite. So what we're hoping to do is substitute half of that BRF with the San Pedro powder, since mycelium metabolizes the same way any type of spore does, and basically get that to take the whole jar up. And then once we start fruiting it, see if somehow inside the mushroom it grows. It has the mescaline alkaloid in it. And that's the base idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about it since we talked about it. I mean, it's an interesting idea, because, I know like, when you're making cakes like that, there are some people that swear by putting, gypsum in, and that it, ends up creating, more alkaloids and stuff like that. And, people swear by more potent mushrooms because they add gypsum to it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know, obviously, I believe that mescaline is a water soluble, alkaloid. So like, it would make sense that since mushrooms are like, almost all water, that it would suck that up into it. I just wonder if it would metabolize it into something else, and then it wouldn't be like an active ingredient anymore. But I think that's a really cool thing to to try to mess with, though.
I mean, at the very least, the dusting would work,
Yeah. I mean, combining the two things, just taking them at the same time, or kind of like a one-stop shop. Well, I don't know. Is there a name like a hippie flip for taking mushroom and cactus?
No, I forgot. I think I called it something, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah,
I think I just called it like the Huxley flip.
Yeah,
because mescaline, Huxley.
Right.
So I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we could also call it just like throwing open the doors.
Yeah.
We want to put that get that rock and roll reference in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're hoping that because basically whatever it eats, like it'll take like some form of like characteristics of it. So hopefully we can find it in the stock. We're hoping that it doesn't bind with anything like that's already in the mushroom that we're not aware of. And I was trying to figure out, I mean, it's not going to bind with the psilocybin, because if it did, then it would become inactive. And since they're both meant to bind to the receptors, it makes sense that they're not that they wouldn't bind with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, if it turns out that they're just like regular mushrooms, then at the very least, hey, you grew some shrooms.
Well, yeah,
not a bad deal.
Yeah,
yeah, and at best, we get some sort of crazy new hybrid that is for some reason this easy to make. Now you can eat cactus without having to taste the cactus.
Oh yeah, it's not good.
Like how the peyote tastes for you?
I mean, it just tastes very plant-like for sure, but like really bitter and like I don't know, like I can't think of a plant that it tastes like, but if you've ever been like, walking in the woods with some stupid friends when you were a kid and they're like, I bet you won't eat that. And you do, and it's something you're not supposed to eat. You're like, like that's what it tasted like, even though you're like, well, I'm supposed to eat this because like I bought it and it's, it's a drug. Like I'm trying to eat this. But it did not taste good. And I think it was on the Hamilton's, Pharmacopoeia, episode where the cactus guy that's the guy that has the DEA license to grow peyote, and like he was like thought that humans aren't supposed to take it or whatever, and he's like, that's why it tastes that way. Like, and he was trying to say that evolution of the cactus evolved to stop mammals from eating it, and so like it made it taste bad, and then it made it so that if you did eat it and dealt with the taste, that you would have a bad time, and like that it was like a toxic substance, which I don't agree with, but it was interesting to hear that guy like talk like that. I was kind of like, well, that's weird.
That's interesting. I think he's just subtly discouraging everybody from trying it because it's endangered, which I can get behind if that was his true motive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, definitely no. I agree with you. Like I did a little bit of San Pedro test powder, and yeah, it like the taste reminded me of what like the darkest green foliage texture in a video game jungle area looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's exactly how I expected like it tasted. It was just like, oh my god, so much plant.
Yeah,
it's literally the only time I ever like had to hold my nose while drinking something.
Yeah.
And oh my god,
kratom for me is damn near hold my nose if I have it dry without capsules.
Oh yeah. I've never done the toss and wash with that. I always put it in capsules because there's just the smell doesn't really even smell that good to me,
Mm-hmm. It's just earth.
Yeah, and with the peyote like being endangered, I think I had mentioned it to you, and I don't know where I heard it, and I don't know if it's true, but it takes so long for a peyote cactus to mature to the point that it can be harvested to have an experience that there's several Native American cultures that use peyote as ceremonially, that they believe that like you have to go out into the desert and find your cactus, and the one that you find that is ready, it has been growing since you were born, and you find it at the time it's ready to harvest, because that's the cactus that is going to give you the vision you need at that time in your life. Again, I don't know if that's true, or if it's just something that like, psychedelic heads made up. It sounds cool though, so I'm gonna like wanna believe it. But if anyone that's Native American is listening and is like, that's not true, like, feel free to send us a message and tell me that. But I think that's a very romantic way of looking at it, even with it being endangered. I think that's a really cool thing, because I kind of feel that way, like with the ovoid mushrooms that I've found like growing. Like I found them, or my friends and I found them after looking and like sitting in this place and talking, and then like they came up, and then we've tried to go back every year, and like the second year after we found them, everyone had started like petering out of that job and moving away, and like we're still friends, but like that time of our life is done, and like we only like the mushrooms are like petering out too. Like that time of our life is gone, and then this year I haven't found anything in that spot. And then none of us work there anymore. And so it's pretty interesting that like when you're talking about finding plant psychedelics out in the wild, like the peyote cactus or mushrooms, that it's like it's meant for that time, for that person to find it for that time, And so whether that's true or not about the Native American cultures, it's a botanical psychedelic, ethnobotanical, like kind of romantic notion that I'm gonna hold on to, I guess.
No, I like it. I like the idea of it.
Yeah.
Because it takes such a long time for those things to mature, and I just read it. It takes like 15-20 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
it's
a
like
a long time.
Yeah, and it's like one plant is enough for one person one time. Like it's not a lot either, I believe.
Oh no, these things are really small, so it's like there's your trip.
Yeah.
And this is your limit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the Denver decriminalization bill that just happened like a week or two ago. And for anyone that hasn't been paying attention, or, has been living under a rock, Denver, the city of Denver, not the whole state of Colorado, voted with a voter referendum and barely passed. I mean, just by like a fractional percentage, to decriminalize the possession, use, and cultivation of psilocybin mushrooms. And, it's one small step toward what, we're hoping to see happen. And, I was like looking, and they've only had, I think it said 7 arrests on psilocybin mushrooms in like the past 3 years in the city of Denver. So it's not like this was a huge problem. But I think like it's breaking it's the first domino to fall, and we're going to see like, the next is going to be the first state to decriminalize, and then, we're going to go from there. But yeah, what are your takes on that?
I think it's amazing. Like when I heard that news, I actually could not believe it. I'm like, wait, it's really happening this quickly. All right, boys, we're on the hype train, because like I'm excited. And the thing is, like, that actually did do something already, and because like the bill passed already, right?
Yeah,
they approved it for medical use. Okay, yeah. Over here in Oakland, California, on the 28th of May, they're holding a hearing to not only decriminalize mushrooms, but pretty much everything else that's on the psychedelic tree. They're talking like mescaline, acid, ayahuasca, like everything.
Just for the city of Oakland?
Yeah, they're holding the hearing in Oakland, and then we're going to see if we can get that motion to move to a state level.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I know. I'm so excited.
Well, I know my brother was actually talking to me about, he's got a friend that does like social work and is from Denver, and like you said, it definitely is the first domino has fallen, because they are already talking about, the legal use for therapy, and not just treatment-resistant depression, and all the legalities behind that are finally, seems like there's like a red carpet now that's getting rolled out for the legalities to come down. And yeah, the social worker from Denver said they're already, arming up with lawyers and ready to start, sending bills to the local government, which is just awesome.
Oh yeah, that's incredible. Like ever since like we started like legalizing like marijuana, like it's just been like constant. Now we're breaking down all these walls, and I'm hoping like eventually we can get like pretty much just all drugs in general decriminalized, kind of like how Portugal did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and what Ruben's always said, and I've definitely grown to the idea of it, it's entirely a human rights situation. Nobody should tell us what we can or can't do with our own bodies and minds. So
exactly.
It's very strange that there's limits on that we don't have zero control over, other than voting for somebody, which we all know that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the most argument that people are saying is like, oh well, people are being harmful on drugs and stuff like that, and like it's not a human rights thing. It's like a violation of societal safety. It's like, okay, well, the problem is not the drug; it's the person that's still taking the drug. Because as much as things are mind-altering substances, it's really the personality of the person that is like, you. If you can't handle your drugs, you shouldn't be doing them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my firm stance with anything. Like, because there are people that do heroin that are not like strung out in an alleyway. They're just, they do a little bit and then they go to their job.
Yep.
The same way with just like how some people will microdose and go to their job, or like people go on their lunch break, smoke a blunt and then go back.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's like, I don't see why any of that should be any more like illegal if like, people can do a fucking smoke break in the middle, like doing their nicotine. Or like, drinking is perfectly fine with the boss, but like you can't trip balls with the boss or something,
Yeah. Well, and where you were talking about heroin too, like, it's not like I think that it should be legalized to the point where you can go to, stores and buy it or whatever. but if you look at the cities that have installed like the safe use areas with like clean needles and help to get off for detox and stuff like that, like their OD rates are like have drastically fell off a cliff compared to everywhere else that is, people are just dying left and right. And, it's the dirtiest, because nobody tests it or whatever. It's all fentanyl and whatever. And, it's like obviously decriminalizing it and letting people make that bad decision, but make it a little safer and just being there to maybe get people off of it. Like, I think it is so much smarter, especially just at least dealing with heroin, and then the decriminalizing, mushrooms or cactus or cannabis and stuff like that. Like, I'm all for that because it's a goddamn plant. And,
exactly.
And it's such a double standard to say like, oh, but it makes people go crazy when, do dangerous things, or it's dangerous to kids or whatever, to the double standard that exists with alcohol, to where right now maybe not now because it's at night, but almost any day at any time, you can go to the store and buy enough alcohol to kill you and everyone in your family and, everyone on your block. You could buy massive amounts of an incredibly poisonous substance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even just like, oh, what has humans made? It's like, I can literally go into the woods right now, pick a bunch of nightshade, brew it into some tea and give it to my neighbors and they'll be dead. Yeah. And it's like, if it was really about like, oh, these plants are harmful, how come you haven't outlawed or like at least like quarantined all these other plants that are out there that are like, they're literally the danger noodles. You're gonna get fucked if you eat these things.
Yeah.
And no one talks about like how crazy caffeine can be for some people.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, oh well, there are these people out there like, I can't fucking function without my fucking caffeine. And like personally, like I never realized that I wasn't drinking strong caffeine until I went to like a Live Coffee Roasters and I got like this cold brew, and I had such horrible anxiety. Like just the whole time, like this is how, and so I went and I'm like, is this what coffee is supposed to be? And someone's like, oh, so you finally got the jitters? That's how I know the coffee is like any good to me. And I need that to function. I'm like, oh my God, dude, what the hell? But with these other plants, like half the time, like we have like the most dangerous things like completely that's like nicotine, disgusting. That thing is going to kill you. Alcohol, there's like studies to show that we're not even supposed to consume alcohol. Yet these things are legal, and yet everything else that's beneficial is just not. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of wild.
Yeah. And I think, at the time that at least cannabis and other things were made illegal, we were much easier to be swayed by propaganda from the government to be like, oh, it's bad for us, and like those movies you were talking about, at the start of people that came up to offer you drugs and stuff like that. Like, we look at it now and laugh because we know the truth. But when those movies came out, they were extremely influential for at least half of the population. And so, I think once cannabis broke that, like, kind of political, divide that we had going on, I think that's why we're seeing stuff like in Denver, like just kind of come quicker, and all of the doors that are going to be knocked down for psychedelics are coming quicker because cannabis did the heavy lifting. Now we've got that politicians maybe really didn't care if people were on mushrooms or not. I know, like, we like to think that, right? That like they're afraid of people, becoming woke or whatever, but
yeah,
but it was, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. And like the thing is, like, you can say, oh, it was not about like being woke or like protecting people. But like we said, alcohol and nicotine are just as dangerous. It was like 100% a race thing. Like,
for sure.
All that propaganda, it was like jazz artists, like all these black people are using marijuana, all these Mexicans are like importing the marijuana, and they go into dangerous rages. And it's like,
yeah.
And like they set up because they're like, they know like this is a class we can attack.
Yeah.
And so with that, we're also gonna, outlaw these drugs because people will like, they'll hear this propaganda and they're already poised to attack this lower class, or like this like poor class of people, and they're just like, oh well, it must be dangerous if these people are doing it, so we're not gonna let little Timmy do it or whatever. And then they just piggybacked off of that, and that's why it just took so long.
Yeah. No, and it was that I think actually hemp was more dangerous to the powers that be than just people smoking weed, but they were able to use, like, it was like a kind of a win-win for government propaganda to go after the races so they didn't like, and and they also got rid of hemp that would hurt their their
all that paper economy, and just basically just everything that hemp could be used for, keep those companies in business. It's just a giant lobby game.
Yeah. And then now, like, cannabis being illegal, I think one thing that there's two things that I've thought about of why cannabis is still federally illegal, even though, like, basically almost every state has at least decriminalized it, is the drug testing, like, industry. Like, I mean, like LabCorp or whatever, that's everywhere, that does all these drug tests at $45 a pop for everybody that gets a job or everybody that's on probation, all this stuff. Like, that, they have to be lobbyists, at least on the local government level, but definitely on the federal level to keep it that, even in a state where it's legal, even recreationally, employers can still test for it, because of its federally prohibited status. And it is still such an unfair test. Like, that they have the technology to tell if you're abusing cannabis or if you've just used it in the past month or two. But they still stick to the terrible, inaccurate test that sticks to, like, if you're a heavier person and you smoke heavily, it could take you 3 to 4 months to clean up. That is so ridiculous that's the accuracy of our drug testing, and they call it drug testing, but the only thing that stays in your system more than a week is cannabis. Like, I think there's that industry, it very much influences cannabis, the rate at which cannabis is becoming accepted. The other thing is the police, that if they want to profile someone, whether for race or whether for, whatever, and they want to search their car, they can get out of, like, totally violating someone's rights, their car or their house or whatever, by being like, I smelled weed. I smelled it. Mm-hmm. I smelled weed. I don't know what to tell you. I smelled weed. And they don't find anything. I've had that happen, like, I look like I travel around with drugs. My vehicle is shitty and it's a Prius, and, I've got bumper stickers that would, allow you to profile and be like, that guy's got drugs on him, but I don't. And I've had several times where I've been pulled over, and had a cop look through my, I got pulled over because I had one headlight out, and the cop, like, ransacked my car and left everything on the side of the road. Oh my God. And I was like, you pulled me over for the headlight, and you didn't even give me a ticket for that. And then you ransack my car, and you're not even going to put anything back. He's like, well, I thought I smelled weed. Have a nice night. And left, and like, so like they have that out. And that's, I think, another thing that keeps it in the gray area that it is it allows profiling, because it's, when you say in court, like, I thought I smelled marijuana, then, like, you're okay. You do whatever you want. I mean, even if you look at the Trayvon Martin case, right? Where that guy killed the kid that was, they had an altercation or whatever. Like, the thing that swayed the jury was like, oh, they found marijuana in Trayvon's system. And like, that really did sway a lot of people's opinion. I remember reading articles about that, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? He's a teenager. Of course there's marijuana in his system. Like,
it's absolute bullshit. Like, what else? You're going to check to see if his cherry's not popped?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, come on, man.
Yeah. So, like, I think marijuana was a scapegoat for racism when it became illegal, and it's a scapegoat for profiling now. And I think, like, you know, that's starting to change. I mean, you live in California, your view is probably completely different, you know, as far as, you know, how, when you travel with it and stuff like that. But like in Ohio, I mean, like, it's like, I don't know, like the ride from my dealer's house to my house is the only time I have weed in my car. And it's the scariest drive of my month or whatever, you know? And, it's just weird, man. I hate having that over me for a goddamn plant. And again, with, like, you know, to go back to mushrooms, I love knowing that there's at least one city where someone who has been listening to podcasts like this, reading books by Terrence McKenna, all these things, it's been like, man, I would really like to grow mushrooms, to microdose even. Not even if they're looking to trip. Or someone that has cluster headaches and they saw something and they're like, oh my God, I wish I could try mushrooms, but I don't know where to get them. I would like to just grow them and not have to deal with going to a drug dealer and stuff like that. At least in that city, there's someone that was afraid of the legality that now will start to grow them. And so, like, and I can't wait to see that, you know, filter out throughout the rest of the country. And, you know, I can't wait to talk to those people that you know, wanted to try, didn't know where to get them, wanted to grow them because they watched videos on it, but they were afraid of the law. And then, you know, once it became legal, then they grew them, because I think that's going to be a truly beautiful thing.
Yeah, 100%. And for like me personally, I think like, I feel like as far as like tripping goes, I think everyone should have a trip where they grow their own or synthesize their own psychedelic, because it's a labor of pure understanding that will help you, I think, in your next experience. And I think definitely, like, the thing that people are always like propagating about is like, oh, well, now everyone's just going to be lazily just doing shrooms in the grass or something. It's like, well, no, there's going to be people that are like, oh, well, that's cool, and never give it a second thought. Yeah. You know? So like, it's just a matter of like, for those that need it, should be allowed it. And like, I feel like that is just like the bottom line when it comes to like human rights and the altered consciousnesses, because to some degree, like, every single one of them is useful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have tried like cocaine, but
yeah.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
How was it for you?
So here's my view on coke. It's awesome, but not worth it at all. Like, it is not worth it. Like, it's, well, and the come down's terrible. Like, I don't like things.
Oh, 100.
Like, to go back to Maui, I don't have like the depression afterwards, but like, if you're like dancing or smoking cigarettes, or, you know, like, just it's hot, you're sweaty, like, you could just be kind of hungover from it. But like, there isn't like this total like, everything sucks kind of withdrawal, to where with coke, like, I mean, yeah, like, that's why it's so addictive, is like, because once it starts wearing off, like, you're like, well, I'm going to do another bump because I feel like hitting myself in the face with a shovel right now. You know, like, I mean, it's like, it sucks, but then it's like so expensive for how, like, there's so much better drugs. I don't know, you know, definitely. The acid is probably the best bang for the buck there is, you know, and is so much better experience than coke, that, you know, you could waste $100 on and not even have enough to last you an hour, you know, to where with acid, you know, $10, you know, gets you through a month of realizations, but, you know, it's a 12-hour effect or whatever. So yeah.
For me, it's like Adderall type drugs. You know, if you're trying to get that fix for a long time, like, that's where you go, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's different, obviously, but the longevity of an Adderall or Vyvanse or something along those lines is so much more. It's such a longer experience that you get a whole day's worth out of.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I like Adderall and modafinil better than coke.
Yeah,
you know, coke Coke has a little bit more of the like social aspect and not as much of the productivity as Adderall or modafinil. But yeah, I don't know. Now, I would like to try. I don't have any need to snort, Coke that's been stepped on a million times and whatever. I like now that I know more about like how that, I've not ever looking to do that again. I would, however, like to do, just because of my interest in plants and plant medicine, I would like to do like like they do in the Andes mountains with chewing the leaf with like, they have like kind of a chaw that they kind of make with some black substance. I don't know what it is, but, I would like to try that. Like, I think that would be pretty interesting. And I think that's, akin to like kind of a strong coffee, kind of effect, I believe. But I would like to try that, I guess. But, yeah, what we get as cocaine in this country is garbage, most of it, I think. But
yeah, because like I don't know, I did cocaine sober, actually not too long ago, and yeah, absolutely worse. Like everything about the cons far outweighed the pros. But like, this one time I had just like one of those crazy party nights where I met some dude and we started talking about stuff. We did business. I got some pills from him actually, and then he actually introduced me to some guy that actually started selling me acid. But basically,
Productive
like,
night.
it was a productive night. I was pretty impressed with myself. I'm like, man, and we weren't even gonna go out. We were gonna sit in and watch The Office. How great is that? Yeah, yay for parties. But yeah, I was already like completely wasted, and because we were doing biz, I'm like, okay, everybody, let's go smoke a bowl too. Guy jumps in the back seat and like, just like, oh hey, let me borrow this magazine. I'm like, okay, sure. Puts it up on the front seat, and there's like 6 lines of cocaine there. And then I was absolutely horrible for the eventual come down. I was pretty sure I died, but definitely the next day it helped because I never felt so alive after like going to the brink of death like that, and I ended up writing a 9-minute song. So I think even cocaine has its value as an altered state of consciousness, but I don't think a lot of people should go to that lengths to do some creativity.
yeah,
Like you said, there's definitely better drugs for that.
yeah, there's much better options. But so you said you had a story about like meeting up with someone to do a stranger trip.
Okay, yeah. So kind of how I found this podcast. Everything goes through Reddit now. I love Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this guy was I saw this post, and this is like in the first 3 months that I found Reddit. I've already made like a bunch of weird like nonsense going on Reddit. Felt like I was really part of the community. And he posts like, is there any SoCal psychonauts out there? And he's like, I'm just looking for people around the area that are looking to trip. And it'd be interesting to meet someone from the internet and see what goes on. So I answered this dude's call. I'm like, hey man, this is me. Here's a little bit about me. Where do you live? And we can plan something out. And we end up talking for like months. And we're basically just talking a little bit about ourselves, a little bit about like our trips and stuff. We get into some like really heavy shit that was going on in my life at the time, because he was like, okay, so just before we had to know each other pretty well, because tripping is a very, it's almost like a sacred thing, and you have to be sure that you're within the right company if you want to trip.
Mm-hmm.
If because like how a set and setting is, and we're basically complete strangers at this time. We don't know anything about each other. And so we're basically just giving like different like media and like stuff recommendations. I'm showing him like some of the songs I've written, and like a little bit of like the album and shit that I've been working on at that time. And so we prep. December rolls around, and so I take this 3.5-hour drive from my house all the way up to his, somewhere far in the mountains. And it turns out that what he wanted was to find someone completely alienated from everyone that he kind of knew in his little cluster of psychonauts, and show somebody completely from the outside an experience that he had built. So basically what he did was he had basically this whole schedule lined up for ourselves. Like we would I would arrive at a certain time. He would make us food for the next day. We would watch out Waking Life. And the next day, we would eat these little rock salt things, and then we go on a hike to prevent the kind of get our bodies ready. And in the week leading up to the trip, we're not supposed to smoke weed. That way, we kind of have a little bit of a tea break for what goes on into the trip. And basically, after we had done everything in the beginning, we had gotten all of ourselves prepared. We went into his room, we dropped the acid, and we watched. Have you seen the film Baraka?
No.
It's basically like it's like a documentary of sorts. It's like a lot of like large, wide landscapes and things from all over the world. It's like an hour and a half long film. It's quite interesting. So he uses that to time. Like with the acid come up. So we drop the acid, you watch the film. By the time the film is done, you are ready. You're pretty much at that level where you're going to start peaking and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So he had his friend that does a little bit of coding to create this program that just keeps adding lines to a screen. And he used that as what he calls a calibration method. Because like once those lines start getting more and more and more, you start noticing that there's a lot more shit going on in between the lines than like you would see. And it was like kind of like a measurement for like, okay, we're both on the same level of the trip if we can see the exact same thing that we're looking at on the line screen, which I thought was pretty clever.
Yeah.
And then he had us do this thing that he hasn't exactly come up with a term for. Where basically, because like you know how like you like touching gets super enhanced and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So basically, we lied down next to each other and we put our hands together and like to the rhythm of the music, like we would move our fingers and shit like that. And the touch sensation, if you close your eyes, created like the visual that you wanted in your brain. And I thought that was really, really cool. And after that, we had like a list of media that he picked out specifically for tripping, so that it would take up pretty much the entire trip, and we would be able to talk throughout the thing of the trip, take breaks in between, smoke bowls. We had fruit. We had a big meal at the end to keep our nutrition up. He had water, and it was quite an interesting experience. It was basically like absorbing all these different art forms and like what can you take away from it.
Huh.
And yeah, so it was actually the first trip that for me took place basically entirely in one room. Because for the most part, I'm used to like walking around on my trips and stuff like that. So it's interesting to just be like to like almost fully plug into like the digital world and stuff like that. And then after the trip, it was we basically ate some food, sat outside, and like kind of talked about things.
Yeah, that's that's really weird. I mean, really brave on your part too, honestly. I mean, that could have turned into the human centipede pretty quick, but
oh yeah, that's what even he said. He's like, I don't really know you either. For all I know, you could be a serial killer just looking to prey on people. I'm like, yeah, we're taking a kind of a huge risk. And then we kind of have like seen photos of each other because we started talking on WhatsApp, and once we got there, we're like, okay, we're definitely not threatened by this other person at all. This will be an interesting experience.
Yeah. No, that's pretty crazy. Have you talked to him since then? Yeah.
I will say not one of the best trips, simply because like I guess for some reason, like due to some of the topics we were talking at, like because he had like such a straight plan, like we were supposed to be talking about certain things at some point, but we kind of skipped over it and got into a completely different conversation. So like vibrations kind of like desynced for a little bit and got a little bit choppy. But we definitely talked about the trip because he's like, well, we're trying to take this thing as like a whole experience takeaway of like these are two people that don't know each other putting themselves in like a same foreign world and then taking away and seeing what happens. And so we kind of talked about, he's like, and we exchanged message, like giant walls of texts, talking about like the trip and like how we felt and everything. And it's been pretty good communication since.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, you think you'll go back up there and trip with him again, or, you know, is it just kind of a one deal?
I think I'll be the host this time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because definitely like what he's shown me, like some of the videos I had seen before, because I was like, but I did like the idea of like what you do is like for certain people, especially like people either you've never met or people that have never like experienced a trip, for you to have like a sort of like what he had, an experience, as he called it, of like things that you can have for people to do
Mm-hmm.
in case like they don't know what's going on, or like they just are kind of looking for sort of like a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why does he want to have a very structured experience compared to just letting what's going to happen?
I think the idea is that it's almost like kind of like an art form, in the sense of like, so these are things that'll prepare you for your trip. This is what I had. This is my collection of things that I think have a massive influence and can give massive influence, because there's a like have you seen that Dan Deacon USA?
No.
Look it up on YouTube. Save it for a trip. It's pretty wild. It's like 20 minutes of Dan Deacon being like an absolute madman in editing, for sure. And a lot of these films have to do with like the state of the world, like how people can view the world and stuff like that. It's a very like kind of artsy-esque thing. And I think it's mostly to just like for like first timers. I think it's the idea of just like, these are the possibilities of the world. Because the one thing I skipped over is like there's this book he had. It was like something called like Remember, and it talks about like basically the human body, or like not the human body, like the humanity, the human state of consciousness, and like what it means to be human, like one of those psychedelic kind of reading things. And so I think it was, so for his experience, I think it's a matter of just like, well, these are to open the possibilities up to like the world around you, like what is possible, like, and I don't know, it's kind of like, I guess like kind of like a showcase for the possibilities of psychedelics and what it can lead to. I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I I mean, I guess that I end up doing the same. Everyone kind of, especially when you do most of your psychedelic experiences by yourself, like everyone ends up having a routine just to have that like kind of comfort. But that's interesting that this guy is trying to involve others in that routine, and kind of almost sounds like research more than anything else, honestly.
Well, yeah, and I think, and like I feel like everybody in like the psychonaut community has some sort of like, it's almost like we actually do all have some sort of treatise that we're looking to kind of build, because I don't know how many other people feel about the drugs, but I definitely feel like I want to like kind of put something into the community, since it's given me a lot, as far as just even these substances go. And I definitely feel like you should have like some sort of entry point. But I highly believe in like each trip you should strive to make different in some form or another, because I don't know, I feel like it's just the progression of the trip is like, do something new with it. If you kind of get into a routine, it almost defeats the purpose
Yeah.
of like what you can do. Because like, let's say like there was this meme on Reddit where it's like, experience LSD from the first time, like everything was folding and shattering in front of me like 1,000 blades of time, and then like 1,000 trips on LSD, or 100th trip on LSD. Yeah, the time knife, we've all seen it. So what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's basically how I would feel if like I only tripped in my room, or if like I only tripped at like the lake or something.
Yeah, and if it just becomes a recreational drug at that point, right? If like, and so if we're using these which is fine. I do that too, but to look at their true potential is personal growth. And, to do that, to grow, you have to challenge yourself, or you have to move on to a, new thing or whatever. There was, the Your Mate Tom on YouTube, like his podcast, he just interviewed James Fadiman, who's like kind of the guy that, came up with the regimen for microdosing. And I think he was an undergraduate student with, Timothy Leary. I mean, he's, an author and, researcher in the psychedelic world, psychologist and stuff like that. And, he had a good quote where he's like, the role of the psychonaut is to grow and need less and less of this tool every time. To get, to
100%.
to get the message, to get the information, to bring the stuff back, like, which I really liked because they were talking about dosages and stuff like that. And he was saying, Terrence McKenna's worst advice he ever gave was 5 dried grams in Silent Darkness or whatever. And he was like, this heroic dose. He's like, and that you don't want to create something where you can't bring anything back. And I like that. Like, that's kind of what I talk about with my videos and the people that seem to gravitate towards my channel and stuff like that is like, more is not better. Like, better is better. And so sometimes better, it could be just stepping out of your comfort zone, but not necessarily with dosage, just with the situation, with the experience itself,
Yeah, and like the thing is also like is you don't need to have a heroic dose to get something out of it. Like not even beyond just like, oh, I trip every month or something. It's just like if you're that person that is trying to like just take as much as possible, like it goes beyond bro. It goes beyond like, oh man, look at like me, hold my beer. It's just wasteful at that point. It's just a waste of resources.
Yeah.
Like dude, you don't need to consume a fucking half ounce of fucking shrooms to get, I don't know, to see like more fucking like little people and to see the things shrink and grow like bigger, dude.
Yeah.
Just throw in like, dude, take an 8th and throw in a Shintaro Sakamoto album. You can see things shrink and grow just fine. And you get to listen to an awesome album.
Yeah.
Cause like, it's just like, I find it completely ridiculous when people try to go and like, well, if you don't do the heroic dose, like you're a coward or whatever. It's like, that's super close-minded. It's almost like a microscopic scale of like vision of like, oh, and like, not to mention like, what are you going to do with like the mystery of the universe if you actually finally uncover it? Like you're not going to do much with it. So there's no sense in like trying to like search for it like futilely through like higher and higher doses. And so you should really just be happy with like what you can already take away from things.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Well, and I've always said that the term heroic has nothing to do with the dose. It's your intention and your expectation. So I don't know what dose of LSD that guy gave you, but you go, meeting him through Reddit and driving to his house and like this whole thing, that's heroic no matter what the dose was. Like that's
100%. That's just like, I could be dead.
Right.
Yeah. No, he was super generous. It was 300 micro.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it was some good stuff. King Gizzard has never sounded so amazing.
I imagine, yeah. Yeah, no, I love hearing that story that, that it worked out good. And, cause I see that on Reddit. I see that on there, people like, hey, anyone want to hook up? And I've always thought like, oh, that'd be cool at a certain point in my life, but it scares the shit out of me now, like, but that's one thing that like, I kind of, hope to see happen more and more. And that's part of the whole like community building of all this that, Stan and I do and everything like that is like not only providing the podcast, episodes for people to come on and tell their story and whatever, or, just talk and, people that may not be able to, talk to other friends and family too. I talk to plenty of people like that, but also like, I hope from our Discord channel or Discord server that some people find out they live near each other and they go to a festival and trip together and end up being friends. Like, that's kind of one of the things I hope to happen with that. And I hope by hearing your story that, maybe people are less scared to do something like that and to go hang out and trip with someone that reached out to them to share that experience,
Yeah, definitely. And like, but I also want to like iterate that like for people that are like if you don't feel comfortable, you definitely should not go.
Oh, yeah,
Like, always be comfortable with what you're gonna do. You don't have to, just like with the dose, you don't have to force heroic. No one's telling you to be a hero.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I definitely hope that people will meet especially like, you know, figuring ways to like effectively communicate, figure out people being trustworthy and all that stuff, and then finally going and doing things, because it was definitely an interesting experience, and it was definitely something I'd like to do again. And the idea of like creating kind of like a psychedelic journey for people is that was definitely something I never really considered before. But I think it would be definitely like a highly useful tool for like helping people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hey man, we're at a hour and a half. I think that's pretty good. You got anything else you wanted to talk about?
Buy my album.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you got, yeah.
Where can I find
you don't
it?
actually have to buy it. At least just go listen to it. It's you just look up my name, Tommy Apollo. I have the it's like neo psychedelia album, Pull of the Cybertide, that's on everywhere, like Apple Music, Spotify, yada yada yada. Preference, go to Apple Music, because Spotify is still trampling over artist rights right now and trying to pay us less for all the music we make. So yeah, and I'll be continuing to make some more interesting music.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, no, man, it was great talking to you, and definitely, you know, send us those links, and we'll put them in the description of the video or whatever. No, it was great talking to you, and you got anything to add, Stan?
Not really, man. Just ready to keep going. You know, summer's coming around, and I think we have a couple people in mind that we're gonna keep the content consistent. And we're just letting everyone know that we're just brainstorming ways to keep things fresh and make sure that what we're putting out is good stuff. So be on the lookout.
Yeah, and we're gonna, you know, we've had some suggestions of like other podcasters or YouTubers and stuff to reach out to and stuff. So we're gonna try and do that. You know, I know we started the year out pretty slow, but we'll try and get back to pumping out podcast episodes here. And as always, thanks for listening, and thanks for helping find the others.